In understanding the destiny of our people, you must first understand what Zion is. And in order to understand Zion, you must first learn to study trees.
Okay. If I thought the preacher's statement was strange, I kept it to myself. One of the things that I learned about the preacher is when he spoke, it was wise to do more listening than talking. I sat cross-legged on the grass. Yafa was sitting in my lap. When the preacher spoke, even she listened. It was something about his voice. As a matter of fact, it was something about this day. It was one of those rare days that the weather was just perfect. Not too hot, not too cold. Just a gentle breeze that made one remember when the earth used to have days of spring.
Look at this tree here, he continued, lifting up a young apple tree that my belle had growing in a pot.
This tree wasn't doing too good. She was trying to nurse it back to health in the pot before planting it in the ground.
This tree is weak. It is dying and would not produce good fruit.
He placed the tree back on the ground.
Now this tree here, this tree is stronger.
He put his hand on an apple tree that was about 7 years old.
This is a good tree. It grows good fruit. The owner of this garden is well pleased with this tree.
He drew his blade and held it high before he sliced down, severing the top of the tree off. My mouth dropped. What in the world kind of sword did the preacher own? But wait, oh my goodness, he just killed one of my belle's apple trees. I frowned as I watched the healthy tree fall to the ground. But why would the owner of the garden destroy such a good tree? A tree that grew perfect fruit, I asked, confused. He sheathed his sword and then squatted down, picking up the weak young tree. He took it out of the pot, and after taking out a pocket knife, he proceeded to cut the root ball off the tree. When he was done, he held up the sickly-looking wood.
This piece of rootless wood is called a Sion, or Zion.
He walked to the trunk of the tree he had just cut, and he put his blade in between the bark and the tree and separated it a little bit. He took the Zion, or the Zion, and sliced the base of it on a clean angle, and then slid it between the bark until it was pressed flushed up against the tree.
Now, Bot, this sick tree can live. This is called grafting. We can graft many Zions on this strong root and know that they will produce fruit.
I sat there stunned. Chills went through my body as the preacher's parable began to unravel in my head. The owner of the garden sacrificed the good tree so that the many sick trees could live. I looked up into his eyes, and he must have saw when it connected in my mind, because he began to speak.
For it is written, in that day there shall be a root of Yeshua, standing as a banner to the people. Unto him the nations shall seek, and his rest shall be esteemed.
And the only thing that I could think as I watched the preacher walk away was hallelujah. Todah. We are Zion. And Yah sacrificed his son so that we could live. We are like that little sick tree. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that little sickly shoot that even now as we were speaking was drawing energy from that stronger root so that it could live. Yafa turned in my arms and wiped her hands down my face. I blinked down at her only to realize that she was wiping away tears. I held her to me and I cried. I cried because I was not worthy of such a sacrifice. The owner of the garden sacrificed that beautiful tree for sick, dying me. Oh yeah. Hallelujah. Toda ya. Dear Father, thank you for giving me one more chance. Thank you. Two strong arms came around me, one around my shoulders and the other underneath my legs. Dawid lifted both me and Yafa in his arms. I wrapped my arm around his neck, burying my head there. Dawid, I know why y'all calls us Zion, I began, but I could barely speak because I couldn't stop weeping. Dawid, I'm so wretched. That beautiful tree had to die because I'm so wretched, I cried. Shh, beauty. He spoke as he swiftly carried me across the crowded yard and into the crowded storage building. I didn't care that everybody stared. Dawid, help me. The full impact of Yehoshua's sacrifice was taking my breath. Dawid ran up the stairs. I know, beauty. Breathe, baby. I know. He carried us into the loft and laid us on the bed. He picked Yafa up and put her in the crib for a nap. Then he came back and joined me on the bed, taking me in his arms. He is the root, I said, looking up at him. He's the tree of life. Without him, none of us can live. My tears began full force. Dawid stroked my hair. And then, y'all, he opened his mouth and he began to sing. He had a beautiful voice. My tears stopped because I couldn't believe it. He could sing. I lay there letting his deep baritone soothe me. He sang about the root of Dawid, the bright and morning star. When he finished, I looked at him with a smile on my face. I didn't know you could sing. He looked down bashfully, one side of his mouth lifted in a grin. No, I can do a little something, but it pales in comparison to my little sister Anatolia. Tell me about her, I told him, laying my head on his chest. Baby, when Anatolia was little, we knew it was something special about her. You see, she didn't just cry like normal little kids, you know what I mean? She bellowed. Her voice was so strong. And when she sings, angels come to listen. I looked up at him. Really? I asked, amazed. You see, I had heard Shlomo and Stormy speak of Anatolia singing before. Dawid nodded. She could sing in the dark and make it feel like sunshine. She was blessed by Yah to have a voice unparalleled. The little singing I do, she taught me, but it's she with the true gift. I lay with my head on his chest and I listened to him talk about his family for the next few hours while Yafa napped. When she awoke, we prepared dinner. I smiled to myself as I cleaned the kitchen later that night. Dawid laid on the floor playing with Yafa. He was pretending to cry as she jumped on him and pounded him with her little fist. He had been so sweet this evening. He didn't even go back out to the training field. He just stayed up here with us the rest of the day. I wondered how he even knew I needed him. The preacher and I had been all the way in the back of the garden where nobody really went except for my bell. It was strange that Dawid had even saw me back there. Anyway, that night before we went to bed, he and I studied the scriptures. He carefully explained to me the parable the preacher had shown me that day, going into detail about the grafting process and how we must be grafted into the tree of life in order to be saved. And y'all, it all made sense then. Yehoshua dying for us, just like that beautiful tree that the preacher cut down this morning. I feel so bad, I told Dawid. He gently pushed my hair out of my face and tucked it behind my ear. Why, baby? He asked. The tree has such a beautiful body, he chuckled. But the tree's preparing another body for himself to give esteem to Yah. We are the body of Mashiach. Yeah, he sacrificed his first body, but he is building a new one. Remember, baby, Yah's words never fall flat. Yah said to Israel that we will be a nation of priests, and so we shall. Never doubt it. In the beginning, he said, let us create man in our image, and so they shall. All that has happened had to happen for Yah's will to come to pass. We are being made one with that root, the root who is one with Yah. It's such an intricate weave, thousands of years in the making. Yes, his words were like healing balm for my tattered soul. That night when I slept, I felt at peace. I felt connected with Yah in a way I had never felt before. Yehoshua was the glue. Hallelujah for that revelation. And speaking of connections, I had also become connected with Dawid on a level I never could imagine that I would. In the morning time when we pray together, Dawid says that it puts us on one accord for the day. And it's true. I'll show you what I mean. Each morning after prayer, before Yahweh wakes, before the sun brightens our part of the earth fully, we train. It is during this training that I see fully what he means by one accord. But it always began with prayer. It was our coffee, and we truly could not function without it. It was as if it made our hearts beat on one pattern. It combined our breaths so that together our lungs expanded and contracted as if in one body. Yeah, that explains it a little better. It was a miracle. And if I wasn't living it, I would never believe such a thing was possible. In the training room, he and I would stand facing each other. He, most of the times, wore no shirt and no shoes, only whatever pajama bottoms he slept in, either his jogging pants or a pair of shorts. I would wear a tank top and a pair of my Thai fisherman pants. My usual fit. You see, I always dressed this way when I worked out in what had become my sanctuary. Anyway, we stood perfectly still, our swords in our hands. Dawid had taught me how to take a moment to connect with my sword, until it felt as if it was an extension of my own arm. In those moments, before you raise your sword, you adjust the feel of the metal in your warm palm, adjust the weight of it, the length of it, the balance of it, so that you don't hinder its movements with your uncertainty. Dawid said the most tragic thing he ever saw was someone stand in the way of their own sword. We looked into each other's eyes, both of us preparing our minds for this workout. One heart, he spoke quietly, and together we began to move. He had taught me to mirror his movements perfectly, as if in a dance. When his arm raised in a swing, so did mine, not even a second off. This kata that Dawid had created, we could do with our eyes closed and still move on one accord. One breath, he spoke, and together we went down in a sweep while taking the swords over our head in a deadly arc. Our swords made music as it whizzed proudly through the air, the steel flashing beautifully in the dimly lit room. It was amazing how this happened, how me and he became one. In and out, our breaths combined as if one body, he said from right behind me. He stood so close that I couldn't tell where my back ended and his front began. And as if we were the same person, He jumped into the air, bringing our swords down to slice our invisible foe to the core. Dawid had taught me to mirror his movements, like I had seen him mirror the movements of what I now believe was a Malakim. And so he and I would do this. It resembled a dance in its precision for about an hour each morning. And when we were done, our breathing heavy from the exercise, he would always walk to me and put his forehead against mine as we let our bodies cool down. Our chests rose and fell together as our breaths came in and out on one accord. Both of our eyes closed as we took in the last moment of perfect peace before our day began. Our eyelids open at the same time. He'd always smile down at me and say, "Good morning, Isha." I'd lift one side of my mouth and grin. "Good morning, Ish." And so began our days. You see, I can't begin to tell y'all in full how much this fast had grown me spiritually. On so many levels. Even Dawid had come to appreciate it because he saw the changes in me. However, I think the time is drawing near to bring an end to it. In fact, I was going to pray it out on the Shabbat. I haven't discussed this with Dawid yet because I had decided to surprise him. The next morning, before I went to work with my ladies, I stopped to drop Yafa off with my bell and to tell her about my plans for Dawid and our special day. She was thrilled and more than happy to help me out. I wanted her to make food for us so he wouldn't be expecting anything. I knew a place where we could go, and it wasn't too far from here where we could have just a couple of hours to ourselves. I was so excited that by the time I reached the field to my ladies, I had a huge smile on my face. "And what has put that look on your face, my sister? Or shall I say who?" Stormy asked as she did some arm stretches preparing herself for this workout. "Nothing and nobody," I told her. Nobody put that look on my face early this morning either. "Ew, Ma!" Eve screeched, looking at Monica, who had just made that statement. "What? How do you think you got here?" she asked the team. "The stork. How else?" Monica shook her head. Not unless the stork's name was Caleb." "Ma, please!" Eve held up her hand, walking away. I chuckled. Monica was a mess. There was never a dull moment when she was around. I looked at my ladies. Our numbers had diminished greatly. I started out with over 50 women and girls, and now I was down to maybe about 15. Stormy, Monica, and Brenda, Uriah's wife, who all still came every day to, as they say, drop a few pounds. Although, in my opinion, they didn't really need to lose any weight. Yeah, they were a little round from having children, but there wasn't enough food in the world anymore to make people fat. And plus, all their husbands loved them dearly. But Stormy said she was determined to get back to her college weight. Now, my other students all had very good potential. Eve, of course, being my prized pupil. She was advancing at a pace that let me know she was going to make quite a warrior. Not only did I work with her, but I see her father working with her in front of their tent every day. And she still sword trained with Dawid and Yafa sometimes as well. Yes, there was great potential in Eve. Tashana, Uriah and Brenda's bots, Sarah and Miriam, Princess Benaya's bot, Lena, Benaya's Isha, and Maggie, believe it or not, were also doing very well with their training. And just a little side note on Maggie, her and Mark Thomas married a few weeks ago, and they made the cutest couple, although Maggie's grandfather wasn't a fan of Mark Thomas and went out his way to make the poor man's life hell. But because her husband loved her so, he was patient with old, ornery Mr. Kimball. My last 7 pupils were new to our little class. They had all come with this last wave of people to show up at the gates, being led by 3 men, 3 warriors of Yah. Arturio which was a huge Spanish-speaking Hebrew. And oh, he was mean. And he didn't talk to many people, not even the people he had led here. In fact, I had only seen him speaking with one person, Dawid, who, believe it or not, spoke fluent Spanish. But outside of that, he kept to himself, although he did train with the men. That was something Dawid showed no quarter on. All men and boys of age showed up on the training field every day. Okay, where was I? Oh yes, the 3 warriors. So I told you about Arturio. Then there was Moses, Dawid, Shlomo, and Benaiah, and Caleb. They all knew him. Apparently he was the son of someone they called Adam, who he hasn't seen since the flare hit. I saw that same sadness in his eye that was in Dawid and Benaiah's eyes. Anyway, Moses was a great fighter, having been trained right beside Dawid and Benaiah since they were boys. Now, last but not least, was the beloved Griot, who at first appeared to be an old man. But don't be fooled by that head and beard full of gray hair. He was still very fit and an excellent warrior. His arms were like tree trunks. Dawid said his fists were like iron. The other men had already given him the nickname Iron Fist. The 3 men were all learned in the truth. Simon had taken a liking to Griot, and when he wasn't studying with Dawid, he would study with the older man. Heck, I even studied with Griot a few times as well. Before the flare hit, he was a teacher of the scriptures as well as a warrior. All in all, our numbers were growing here, and I no longer worried that we were going to run out of supplies, because we never have. Y'all always provided. No one has come here empty-handed. Yeah, the open space we used to have behind these walls were now being filled with tents, but it was all good. Y'all was moving things around, and the only thing we can do is watch and wait. I looked at my small group of women and smiled. I felt good about my little crew of she-warriors. However, an hour later, I was singing a different tune. Monica, you get yourself down there now and knock out 10 push-ups. Let's go, I yelled over her complaining. Grudgingly, she got down there while calling me all kinds of tyrants and began her push-ups, or what she was calling push-ups. Now the fellas, who had a light training day because Dawid was in a good mood, decided at that moment to come over and see what we were doing. Caleb and Shlomo instantly began to pick fun at Monica, who technically she doing her push-ups, but her form was horrible. Stormy motioned for Shlomo to stop laughing at Monica. Y'all, Stormy is so sweet. Her nature is far too gentle to be a fighter, but she came every day, so she got an A for effort. Shlomo and Caleb, however, did not stop laughing. Even Dawid, who was leaning against a tree, got in a few chuckles. And you know, it was kind of funny. The back half of her body was just laying on the ground. She really was just lifting her head. Even Eve hid her grin behind her hand. Evidently, though, Monica didn't appreciate being laughed at. What's so funny? She asked, jumping to her feet, mean mugging her husband. Baby, what was that you was just doing? If you're not going to take this serious, you should not be wasting these time, Caleb said, still chuckling at her. Monica's mouth dropped. She was clearly insulted. Oh, come on, babe. Don't be like that, Caleb tried to soothe, pulling her into his arms. Get your hands off of me, Monica replied, slapping his hands away. Now by this time, they had drawn quite a crowd. Even Simon, Bill, and Griot came over to see how this was going to turn out. Monica folded her arms and looked up at her husband through narrowed eyes. You just jealous, because I'm being trained by Black Beauty herself. You don't think I know? Caleb frowned.
Please. Girl, don't you know? Ain't you heard? My Ak over here undefeated, baby. Count 'em, not one defeat.
Caleb gestured toward Dawid as he spoke. I looked at my husband. He was chuckling to himself, looking at the ground, probably just as embarrassed as I was to be suddenly drawn into this couple squabble. And so is my Cody, undefeated. The girls began to applaud. Oh goodness, I don't think I like where this was headed. Caleb held up his hand for quiet.
Well, he said now, speaking to the crowd, there was that one time. No offense, D.
What the world was he talking about? Now you see, I hated to be pulled into their little squabble. True. Monica and Caleb had one of these relationships where it seemed as if they were always competing with each other. And they loved it. But now he was just making stuff up. I am undefeated. Dawid saw the look on my face, and his chuckle turned into a laugh.
Tell him about it, Ak, he told Caleb. Yeah, you know, that one time by the bridge when my boy Dawid shut the famous Black Beauty down. Had her like, oh, I can't move, help.
My mouth fell open, and I was trying not to laugh at his impersonation of me, but dang, it was funny. I began, but Monica cut me off. Boy, please. She just doing that because it's a wife's duty to make sure her man always feel like a man. Now it was my turn to laugh at the look on Dawid's face. In fact, if he was anybody else coming at her like that, we all know she would have shut him down, just like she did everybody else. Cause like I said, she undefeated. Well, I snapped my mouth shut. Monica said it best. In fact, she continued, she's so good, she done trained us all to be just as raw as her. Whoa, wait a minute. Mon, I began, but Caleb cut me off.
Oh yeah, she real good. I saw those little sorry push-ups she was doing. Hell, Eve could have trained you better than that. No offense, D.
My mouth dropped again. Dawid, Shlomo, Simon, and the other fellas was cracking up at this point. And let me tell y'all something. Pride is a monster. And in most cases, it could really send you off. But mine was pricked, and she was hungry for blood. Okay, that's it. Monica opened her mouth to speak again, but I held my hand up, stopping her. Is that a fact, Caleb? I asked. He looked at me and popped his collar.
Hey. Don't stone me. I'm just a messenger.
Now, by this time, all the men is clapping Caleb's hand like he done something. I nodded. You willing to put your money where your mouth is? I asked. You see, Monica was big on trash talking. She was gifted. I never had the gift. I was more of a don't talk about it, be about it kind of girl myself. And if these men thought that the only way to victory was brute strength, then they were getting ready to get a rude awakening.
Baby, please, don't be foolish to try to prove a point. That ain't a good look,
Dawid said from where he was still reclining against the tree. I chuckled. No, you know what ain't a good look? How you and your men are too afraid to put your money where your mouth is. It was the women's turn to laugh. Dawid stood straight up then and began to slowly approach me, looking so good. This brother's swag was second to none. He had a smile on his handsome face. It was so good to see that, y'all. To see him actually having a little fun.
Okay, beauty. I'll appease you for a minute. What you got in mind?
He came to stop right in front of me. I looked way up into his face. Why, Dawid, a good old-fashioned game of capture the flag. Team Ish against Team Ishai. His rusted eyes took me in so fully. There was nothing about me he didn't see.
You know, It's never good for an Isha to challenge her Ish, he whispered.
I lift one side of my mouth in a smirk. What, you scared?
Psst, yeah, right, he laughed. I was just trying to give you a way out so you won't be embarrassed in front of your crew.
He picked up my hand and brought it to his lips where he kissed my knuckles gently. I chuckled at him, raising one of my eyebrows. Will you stand for the challenge, or won't you? The look he was giving me was indecent. You see, I knew Dawid's looks, and I can tell you, what was on his mind wasn't capturing no flag. He wanted to capture something else. I smiled, returning his look. In due time, I can, I said to myself.
Beauty, he looked at me. I accept your challenge.